afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our next lesson. We are going to be focusing our attention on reviewing the Little Brown Jug, and then we will be introducing our new song. Now, in regards to our review videos, one thing that some students have been very forthright about with me, which I always appreciate this from our students, is truthfulness in terms of what you're using and what you may be, I don't want to say avoiding so much so as you're trying to utilize your time as efficiently as you can. And I have had some students that have said that they go ahead and they fast forward through the reviews so as to get to the new meat, because they can always go back and watch the prior video whereby they can see what we had gone over the week before. So why do we spend such a large amount of our time each week reviewing? Well, one of the benefits of doing a review is, well, for one, you may hear a different spin on the song the second time around. For example, today, I felt like I needed to replay the song for you to show you how it would sound had you not made, for example, the mistake that I made in the prior video, where at the end, I did not give myself enough time to transpose and not lose time without dropping that pickup note at the beginning. So I want to go ahead and play that for you because we didn't get to it last week. So you may hear the song a little bit differently, but I think the most beneficial reason for watching the review is that students reach out to me after having received the song and after having played the song and ask me questions that I would not have come up with on my own. There are some questions that I'm just ready for. I give a song out and I know this question's going to come up, this question's going to come up. I can predict a good number of questions that I feel I'm going to be able to answer during that follow-up week. But there's always curveballs. There's always sometimes a handful of questions, not just one or two, but maybe 4, 5, 6, or 7 questions that I get via email or via a student coming in here to the studio or playing for me in a video and sending me the video, and they ask me a question during their playing that I think to myself when I hear it, you know, that's a great question. That is a perfect thing for me to cover when I review the song. And there are actually a few of those this week. So before you go ahead and fast forward, obviously you can do it, you may just want to just look through not only this review, but some of the other reviews if you have been skipping them. Because again, sometimes I'm able to cover things I ran out of time with. Sometimes I'm able to fix mistakes. There actually was a mistake last week that I want to make sure that I go over with you this week. But also, I'm able to better review with your help. Because again, some of you come up with these ideas that I would have never, questions rather, that I would have never come up with on my own. And so during the review week, it gives me the opportunity to reflect on them and add some of them into the review of the song. Now, the first one was from a student. Student was struggling with trying to play this song traditionally. And when I say traditionally, I mean playing with the single note in the left hand when the letter was outside of the box, and then the chord when the letter was inside of the box. And they were having a hard time distinguishing between the two. And their question was, well, they said to me, so I watched the video last week, and I will review this again. This is not something I did not go over, but they said, I watched the video last week, and I saw that you gave all of us the opportunity to try to play the song with only chords. So basically what that meant was you were playing everything in the left hand as if it was a chord. And again, I will review how that would be done in just a moment, but that's no different than what I went over last week. So you'll hear much of the same in regards to that. Their question, though, was on the other end of the spectrum. They said, can I play all of these things in the left hand as single notes? And the answer is absolutely. You can completely discount everything that's in a box and basically just take the box away. And if you do that, the song will actually sound pretty cool. I'm going to show you a few things that can be done in regards to that. A really cool split point idea here with that will allow that to sound pretty cool. So after I do the whole review, I'm going to reset the camera. I'll replay this song so that you can hear what it should have sounded like last week. Again, I have to change one of my directions last week as well that I gave you. It scrolled across the screen. I wasn't able to fix the audio, so I just did a little scroll across the screen at the moment that I made a miscue. But I will talk about that this lesson as well. But that was a great question. I thought, you know what, that's a great thing. I would have never even thought to go over that. But, you know, we went over bass last week and how this idea of this walking bass is so much of a common trait of big band styled songs that that idea of making everything bass is a really, really cool thing to go over. Okay? Another issue that came up last week was how to best play the notes of the chord for those of you that were playing chords. If you were playing all of the notes. Their question again went something along these lines. I know all of the different ways that I can put my left-hand notes in orders. Okay, we spoke about inversions in the past, and that's exactly what those are. So their question was, how do I know which order to put them in? Do you have any suggestions? And I, of course, if you ask if I have a suggestion, I do. My suggestion would be to play all of the chords that you're going to play in this song, and there are only 2 chords. If you're just playing the chords themselves as they set, there's only 2 things that are in boxes. It's the C and the F. I would play them both in root position. I played them in root position last week. If you watched the video, you probably noticed that. But I would play them in root position. It's, in my opinion, much more easy to figure out where the root is because you can play the same 3 fingers. Okay, you just find the low note and then you just add the other 2 as well. And there's no benefit to not going to the root because at no point in this song are there 2 chords in a row. Okay, that hasn't been the case in weeks past, in classes past, where you may have a couple chords. I know in Michael Row the Boat Ashore, I've given that out. There's been chords, you know, a couple boxes in a row. In this case, we have the opposite issue. We have bass tones all in a row, okay? But we have had some instances where the chords were one after the next. And if that's the case, if you're not reaching down for a bass tone, a single note, well, then I think there's an argument to say that the order that you put them in can vary in terms of ease of play if you're already on one chord and you're going to another one. If that's not the case, my suggestion, which is my suggestion here, is go with the root. C, E, G for the C chord, F, A, C for the F chord. Okay? Now again, this is all assuming that you're playing this in a way that would best match the way that it's printed. I also went over with you ways that you could have tackled this song in a more easy play way, using the easy button, using a standards big band style beat. I know I mentioned possibly having another rendition of this song available to you. The one I was able to find was a bit too different than this one, so I didn't want to go ahead and confuse anyone further. So I'm going to go back with my original thought on the matter, which was there are a few changes that need to be made to this music in order for you to play it in the easy button system, okay? Each one of these chords would need to be played 2 beats before, which basically would mean that you'd put a box around the first thing that you saw in the measure instead of the second. Okay, so that first measure, there's a C chord above beat 3, it's got to be above beat 1. So you put a box around the first C that doesn't have a box. Okay, and if you do that, you can neglect the second one, particularly if you're using a band, because if you're using the band, you're not going to hear the second one either. You're not going to hear the second one anyhow. Same goes for measure 2. Measure 2, there's an F outside of the box, you've got to put that in the box. The next one you can skip. The next measure, you put a box around the G, and you can actually skip the other 3 left-hand movements. Okay? Line 2, put a box around the first C, you can cancel the second C out. You put a box around the next C, you can cancel that next C in the box out. Then you can put a box around the first F, you cancel that next F out. Put a box around the G, get rid of the F, the E, the D, and then you put a box around the next C, you can cancel the last one out. So basically what we're doing is we're looking to have some movement in our left hand at the beginning of every measure, and as long as you do that, you can discount anything else in the left hand, whether there's a box around it or not. Okay? Again, when I play the song for you, I will show you how that would inevitably sound. And that seemed to be what the vast majority of students were doing. Not all of you, but the vast majority were tackling it that way. It's a fast-paced song, and they were looking to do that. Some got to the point of using 2 or 3 fingers for the left hand, but they did it that way. Okay? Now, in terms of setting this one up, again, standards, perfect. If you have a song set up, my suggestion was to pick a song that would be from around this general era. This is a really early big band song, which is reminiscent of the time that you might have heard something like In the Mood, you know, some Glenn Miller. This wasn't a, 50s, 60s, 70s. This was like 20s, 30s, teens. And you want to think of songs that were utilizing that type of music. And I think In the Mood, albeit coming a little bit later, was kind of hearkening back to this early big band style. So for those of you that have the option of a song setup, you can use that. And that, I think, actually matches this song very well because it gives you that walking bass sound that we're looking for. Okay? Now, we spoke about the pedal last week, releasing the pedal, holding the pedal down. Our pedal meant release the pedal. Pedal just meant hold it down. And if you saw pedal twice, it meant you lifted your foot up and then you put it down again. Again, a lot of this is piano based, but I know some of you are doing it that way. So this brings up the question, again, that came from a student. Why does it say R pedal in the same place on every line? And is there a reason, or do the notes have a reason for that? And I wouldn't necessarily say the notes have a reason for its placement. I would say more that the left-hand movement has a reason. Because what are we doing there? We're playing individual bass notes, notes that are lower in the left hand than where our chords would be. You have likely never heard a bass guitar player strum a chord. And the reason you haven't heard a bass guitar player strum a chord is the same reason why you haven't seen a piano player play chords down here. They generally play chords up in this general area. Notes down there are played individually, or at least maybe an octave apart at most. You usually don't hear a full chord being played there, just like you don't see a bass player strumming chords. That's more of a rhythmic guitar sound than a bass tone. Well, what are we hearing there but 4 bass tones played once on each beat? And what happens if I'm holding the pedal down? Each one of those bass tones, those low tones, are going to bleed into one another. Well, I want to avoid that. I want to avoid those bass tones bleeding into one another by picking each one of them up. And as long as I pick each bass tone note up, and that's going to happen automatically by not having the pedal down, they're going to sound clean. Okay? Those are the instances where your bass is more highly concentrated. It happens once on each line. So it shouldn't surprise you that the pedal is reflecting that, because again, those notes can start to meld into one another, and before you know it, they're going to sound pretty terrible. So we want to make sure that we're not allowing those notes to blend in by not holding that pedal down. Okay, so you let the pedal go, you play those notes, okay, and then the second measure of the next line, the pedal comes back. All right, and that makes sense because you're playing a chord. Okay, you hit the pedal on the bass tone, you follow it with a chord. The chord rings out for 2 beats. Okay, you let it go, you hit the pedal again, because what did it say? Pedal, pedal. You let it go, you play the F, bass tone. Now this is a new pedal section, so you've let go of the C. You pick up, you play the F. F bass tone, F pedal. Foot comes up off the pedal, there's your bass line. G, F, E, D, C. No pedal. And again, you do the same thing on lines 3 and 4. Okay. Something else that students tended to struggle with in regards to this song was that same section, but the right hand aspect of it, because it's very minor here, but the end of the first line is not the same as the same location on line 2, which would be the second to last measure. Now lines 1 and line 3 are the same, and lines 1, line 3, and line 4 are the same, but line 2 is different. Line 2 is missing 1 B. So on line 1 we have 3 Bs, 2 of which are eighth notes. The last one is a regular B, then we have A and B. So we have 5 notes in the measure with the walk down. Line 2, there's only 4. Line 2, that measure, right above where it says our pedal, is where most students struggle, because they want to play line 2 as if it were printed like lines 1, 3, and 4. Now technically, line 2, at least from a reading perspective, is easier. It's easier because it's note for note. It's a quarter note in the right hand, and you're playing 1 note for every beat in the left hand. So I know that the left hand is not indicated as notes, but had it been, those would also be quarter notes. Okay? So you're playing 1 note per quarter note in the left hand, 1 quarter note in the right hand per quarter note in the left hand. That doesn't happen on lines 1, 3, and 4. I think that's harder because you got to fit those eighth notes in there. There's 1 extra note in the same block, in the same area. Okay? So we want to be a little bit mindful of that. Take advantage of the fact that line 2 is different and technically easier. And don't make that same mistake of playing line 2 like lines 1, 3, and 4, or playing lines 1, 3, and 4 like they're line 2. The lyrics can help. Okay? Try to follow the words. I find that the lyrics helped me in remembering not to miss that pickup note the second time through, because it's "'Tis you who made my friends my foes." Can't forget the "'tis." Okay? So as long as I'm following the lyrics, I have that opportunity to make sure that I don't make that mistake that I made last week. If you're going to transpose, that was an option that you had this week. Make sure that you pick up the last note in the right hand before you transpose, because I know on the Lowrys what happens is if you're holding a key down, let's say you're holding the C down, the way that the Lowrys are set up is your right hand note can completely fade away. So you're holding the key down, you're not getting anything, which would happen if you're using a piano. Now if you don't let that go and you transpose, guess what's going to happen? The sound's going to come back without you restriking the key as that higher note or lower note, as the case may be, wherever you transpose. That's not natural. A key strike would normally equate to a sound. But the way that the Lowrys are set up is the transpose affects the key in that it makes the computer inside the instrument think that that key has been struck again. So we want to make sure that we don't run into that issue. Now again, when I play it again for you, I'll show you what I mean when I say that. The other thing, and I keep harking back, I guess, to these measures at the end of each one of these lines, because that does seem to be where students struggle with this. Again, I have a general idea as to where you're going to have issues, but that idea is confirmed, obviously, when I hear you do it. And those measures, lo and behold, have been the ones. Those have been the ones that that students have really struggled with. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're moving down in our left hand and we're moving up in our right. Okay, you're going from the B's, you do go down to the A, but then you go up, back to the B, up to the C, up to the D, and then up to the E. And your left hand, this is in the right hand, your left hand is moving down. So you want to be a little bit careful with that because your hands do tend to kind of move in opposite directions. Okay? So when I reset here, I'm going to play the song again for you a couple more times. One using the method that one of the students asked me about last week, and then the other reviewing quickly how to play everything as a chord. And then we'll head over to a Lowry. I'll play this one for you using the In the Mood beat, but also to show you how you do have the time, as long as you're ready for it, not to lose the pace of the song during a transpose. So we'll be right back. We'll play some music for you. Okay, so here we are with Little Brown Jug, and again, this was a student, I guess we can call it a suggestion, request, of turning every single one of these notes into a single letter in the left hand. So rather than a chord, okay, they wanted everything to be left hand led with just notes. And so let me play with a piano sound first, which is going to sound really cool. And let me show you something really cool that many of you have the ability to do on the clavinovas here. So if we start out piano sound. Okay, now I went about halfway through because it sounds fine that way, but something that you can do because you are playing two C's in a row, two F's in a row in a bunch of different locations, you can pick and choose your octaves. So if I go, which gives you a little bit of variety. Now, you don't have to do that at all. It will make it a little bit harder, okay? Let's take a look, though, at something a little bit different. So what we're going to do here is we're going to set what we call a split point, okay? So there's an option here. I'm looking at a CVP 709 here, so your instrument may be set up a little bit differently. But I'm going to go to split point. And first I'm going to see where the split point is. So it's saying F sharp 2. And it's showing me where that is, so that's a good spot for it. And now I'm going to go in the screen here where it says left. And when I do that, I can see where that point of reference is here. And right now it says accompaniment ooh. So I'm going to actually change that in the screen. And instead of using the accompaniment ooh, I'm going to put on a bass sound. So I'm going to go to guitar and bass. And I can see here I have a bunch of different guitars, and I'm going to choose the one that says bass, and I'll just choose the first one. We'll see how that one sounds. Okay, so that's kind of a interesting bass sound. There's a ton. Here's an acoustic bass. Okay, here's a slap bass. So a ton of different bass, fretless bass. I have 3 pages on this instrument of bass sound. Ballroom bass. I mean, you choose rock bass, electric bass, mellow finger bass. Let's go with that one. Okay, so mellow finger bass. Now I have the bass here and the piano here. So what do you think is going to happen when I play these as single notes? And the answer is they're going to sound like a bass player. So you're going to sound like single notes in the right hand. Your left hand's going to do this. And you put them together, and it's got really a nice jazzy sound. And you can go down really low with that left hand. not only can you go down really low with that left hand, you can also balance it out and make it sound a little bit louder. So right now my piano is set at 100 in terms of a numeric value given to volume, where my bass is only at 60. So if I want to bring that up a little bit, at least to compete with the piano here, there's the bass is much louder here. I don't have to go down that low. I like it that low. So I get a nice bass tone, which is what happens in big band style music. You hear that bass player going. Now we're not quite that orchestrated yet in terms of our left hand. It's not quite that tricky, I guess I can say, for lack of thinking of a better term at the moment. Intricate is probably a better way to put it. But it's coming. That is something that we will speak about down the road. So in the meantime, you can still get the benefit of that sound and hear a bass tone. And if you want to get rid of it, it's easy. It's just turning the left off, and now you're back to the piano you started with. Okay? Now we're going to go take a look at the Lowry. I'll play it for you again using the band. I'm going to be a little fast, about 138 beats per minute, but I want to show you that you can play through this song and not lose time, even if you want to transpose. Okay, so here we are back on the Lowry. Again, if you have this in the mood in the song setup, you can go ahead and try that one out. I don't know if you do. If you do, great. If you don't, obviously the regular standards would work fine as well. But what I liked about In the Mood is it did have that walking bass that we were trying to emulate anyhow, just so you can hear that walking bass and what it sounds like. So there's that bass player on basically every beat, and we're doing that throughout this song, at least once on every line. So this is kind of giving that to me without me having to do it all. Now, again, what I am doing is I am playing the first thing I see in the left hand as a chord in every measure, and I'm neglecting everything else. And if you do that, it's going to sound great. Now, what I want to make sure that I'm doing is I want to know where my transpose is. That's one of the benefits of this instrument, is there's a section that says transpose, so I don't have to go on my screen. I am going to use my left hand because I played my last chord at the end of the fourth line, and the same chord is played at the beginning of the first line when I restart. So I have a little bit more time to reach up and hit that transpose. I want to transpose up to the key of C sharp, or +1 on a Yamaha. And even though I'm at here 140 beats per minute, it's faster than I've actually done it before, I am still going to have time to do it as long as I don't stop. If I take a breath, I'm likely going to lose my, my timing, but let's see if we can do it without. Now, someone this week asked me what my thought process was going through that, and I jokingly said, well, I prayed during it to make sure that I didn't make a mistake, which isn't entirely untrue. But what I did also take into account is the fact that I just played the G. So it's going to be pretty easy for me to find the G because I just played it. So I'm going here. So I'm going here. And then I'm playing that same G when I restart. So if I'm looking at the end of the song, it says, I love thee, which is, and then I need 'tis you who make my friends my foes. So I'm looking at the same G that I just played down here. I'm restriking it, with my index finger this time, at least that's what they're suggesting. So I'm going to do it very slowly here. So I'm still playing that G. So I'm going to start at the end of the last measure here. So it's C, G, C. Do you hear that change? So it's C, G, C. Okay. Now again, you want to make sure that you're not holding that that right hand note down while you transpose, because even if you're using a piano sound, so here's a piano down here. Now the piano in a second is going to fade away. Watch what happens when I transpose either up or down. So right now the piano's gone. Hear it? Now I'm not restriking that key. That's not natural. So I want to avoid that by transposing while I'm not holding the key down, which does make it a little bit of crunch time there because you literally do not have a rest. That first G rather is the last beat of that last measure the first time around. Okay? So as you're playing through it again, if your beat is here, you have a very, very small amount of time to get to the beginning of the song without losing your time. So you're here. Now finally, the last thing that I had a student ask me this week was in regards to playing it more traditionally but on an organ. So I'm going to reset us over the Lowrey Inspire for just a moment to show you a really cool thing that you can do on the Inspire that is necessary. One of the reasons that you can do this on the Inspire and the Rialto and some of the older Lowrey models as well is they have a little bit of a larger screen. The bigger the screen, the more information that they can put in it. So I'm going to show you something that instrument, along with some of the others that you have at home, does as well. And it will allow you to play this, particularly the left-hand section where you have the single notes, in more of a traditional organ-based way. So when we come back, we'll take a look over at the Inspire, and I'll show you how to utilize a really cool feature that instrument has within it. Okay, so here is our final review. And again, this is a question that came up from someone with a Rialto, but I wanted to show you that this is something that's available on the Inspire as well. So one thing, and this potential, this thing I'm going to go over is not just something that's available on the Rialto. This starts out on the Easy 10. I have a button over here that says MCS. Now, if you have a button that says MCS, one of the great options for that is that it gives you the ability to get the whole chord with one finger. Okay, now I have the memory off, which is another feature that is on the Easy 10, so that the chord only plays when I hit it. So there's the F, there's a C, there's a G, okay. You notice though, it's not only not holding the chord down for me, it's not playing the bass. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the bass tones. Now you might say to yourself, well, here's my chord, where's my bass? On an organ, where's the bass come from? The bass comes from the foot pedals. Okay. Now, how do you know which pedals to play aside from practicing? Well, obviously that is the best way to know which pedals to play. But I'm going to show you a really cool feature. Now, this is something that the Inspire, the Rialto, and some of the larger instruments have. There is a feature on this particular instrument. It's on page 7. It's called Keyboard Split, or Keyboard Screen, rather. I apologize. And I don't know if you can see this from your vantage point. I tried to set the camera up so that you could see it as best you could and also make out the buttons on the panel over here on the left. There's a sensor underneath every one of these notes in the right hand on the top keyboard. Okay? Underneath every left hand note here as well, and then under every pedal. So as I press down a key on either level or a foot pedal, I get a light that shows up on that particular key here. Now, why is that helpful? Because if I'm going to do my walk down, I'm going to walk down G, F, E, D, C. And again, if you can see this from your screen, it's lighting up the G, then lighting up the F, then lighting up the E, then the D, and then the C. Now, I'm not using any background at this point. I'm going to do it very slowly, okay? So you start out here, you got the G in the right hand, foot pedal first, because that's what I see. I see just a letter. Chord follows. Bass. Now, it's not giving me the answer. I still have to hit the right pedal, but it will show me in the screen if I've hit the wrong pedal or the wrong note or chord for that matter, which wrong pedal, wrong note, or wrong chord I hit, so I can hopefully much more easily fix it. Okay, and I find that to be particularly helpful with the feet, which are not right underneath your nose. It's one thing you can look down at your hands, it's another thing entirely to look down at your foot. So this will save you from that. And again, it's called keyboard screen, which on this instrument is on page 7.